What does the final closure of the last steelworks in the United Kingdom have to do with a train running from Stansted to Norwich? I'll tell you after I let you know that I'm Grannyopteryx. Anyone who's on Gmail will be familiar with the Quora posts you keep getting. I don't read all of them, of course, I just don't have time, but I am glad I happened on this one. And, well, let's just get on with it. This was a post question, non-British people who visited the UK for the first time, what shocked you the most? And the answer here was, well, I am British, but have lived in Finland for the past 20 years. And although I visit at least once a year, I rarely take public transport. Usually it's a rental car. That was until last weekend when I decided to make a lone trip without my family and thought I would take a train from Stansted Airport to Norwich. I booked a ticket with an app, Trainline, I think. It all went fine until I got to the train station under the airport where I saw this sign. And the sign reads, it's there in front of a roped off area. It's a big red sign and it says, "Do not abuse our staff. We will not tolerate any physical or verbal abuse of our staff and we may seek to prosecute." My first thought was, how strange to have a sign like that. Surely people aren't abusive to staff. Anyway, I was about 3 hours early for my booked train and wondered if there was an earlier one and walked along a bank of self-service ticket machines, of which every single one was out of order. So I waited in line, finally, to a window and a conversation that went like this. Me: "Hi, my train goes at 1600 to Norwich. Is there an earlier train?" Her: "No trains today." Me: "Oh, I have a ticket for a train at 1600. Her: "All trains are cancelled this weekend." Me: "Oh, OK." Her: "Go get a bus replacement." Me: "Oh, OK. Where is that?" Her: "Go and find out." I gave her a smile, said thanks, and wandered off to try and find the bus station. There's a typo here, I'm quite sure of that. When I arrived, it looked like a scene from Children of Men. People everywhere, no queues, and it looked like mayhem. There were all those no smoking signs everywhere, but in every language except English. I'm kinda not surprised that they have to put those signs up about being non-abusive, but I also kinda get it. The staff are that rude and the service is that bad. And then he says, would I take a train again? Or bus? Probably. It was a proper adventure. And then there's an edit. To be clear, I wasn't really fazed by the ticket office. Conditions didn't look very welcoming for customers, let alone staff. My main point was the difference between me taking public transport when I lived in Oxford 20 years ago and now. And if I would blame anyone, then it would be the government, who have single-handedly screwed over every public service in the UK. And that's where I disagree with him. Yeah, the government isn't that competent at running public services. What government ever has been, though? The problem has to be the labour laws. And this is where I bring in my item about Port Talbot. That's in South Wales, and it was the last place where steel was made in Britain. And it was closed down last week. And here I have an article in The Guardian where they're talking about the prospect of the foundry being closed down. Devastating, it says here. Port Talbot Steelworks to shut blast furnaces and shed up to 2,800 jobs. That's a lot of jobs. It's an entire town out of work. There won't be one person in Port Talbot who isn't affected by this. The owner of Port Talbot Steelworks has confirmed that its 2 blast furnaces will shut down in what unions have condemned as an absolutely devastating blow that will cost up to 2,800 jobs directly and many more in the South Wales community. The parent company of the steelworks is Tata Steel, an Indian company. And they said it was not feasible or affordable to adopt trade union proposals to continue production at the loss-making plant during a transition to greener, cheaper steelmaking operations. But the problem is the unions. Now, we have a problem of balance here. You see, the reason here, I'll put this back. Somebody said don't flick through the screenshots so quickly, so just a minute. Right, how's that? The problem is this. This person here at the information or the ticket desk could not be sacked. Trying to sack her would cause the company more trouble than it would be worth just to keep her on. Rude, harassed, sick, whatever caused her bad behaviour. The minute they tried to sack her for being rude, she would go straight to a union. There'd be a strike which might go to other companies as well. There'd be an employment tribunal, a whole lot of legal stuff. They just couldn't do it. I recall a few years ago, a woman, small business hairdressing shop, she was trying to come up with a smart image. She interviewed a hijab-wearing Muslim woman, and she made the mistake of telling her that she wasn't really suitable for the job because she wanted the shop to have a smart, modern look, and hijabs didn't go with that look. The hijab-wearing woman went straight to an employment tribunal, sued the life out of that business, which closed down. But that's the problem. The unions, in their probably, at least to begin with, certainly to begin with, in their urge to make conditions, working conditions, better for ordinary working people, have priced ordinary working people out of the market. And then you've got, here we are, I'll change again, Port Talbot closing down because businesses can't afford to pay the sick pay, the disability benefit, the insurance. Insurance for something like a foundry must be astronomical. I mean, insurance on workers' benefits, it must be astronomical. All sorts of, pensions, all sorts of things that you have to pay extra. And then if you find an inefficient worker, you have to carry that inefficient worker because you can't sack him or her. And that's the problem. There have been many famous cases of people unionising and getting equal pay. And you think, well, yeah, they're quite right. They're absolutely correct. They're being exploited. And then the next thing you know, the business just folds. That happened with the car industry as well. Now, I'm not saying that the people who were fighting for better conditions, better salaries, parity and all the rest of it, I'm not saying they weren't right. They were right. But what made Britain great in the 19th century was the exploitation of the worker. And we can't just say, OK, it's the government that's at fault. Hang on, back to this Quora thing. What this man says at the bottom here, if I would blame anyone, then it would be the government who have single-handedly screwed over every public service in the UK. Yeah, well, no, it's the unions that have done it. There's a combination of things. The first is the unions have fought for better conditions, better pensions, better salaries, all the rest of it. And the other thing is that the unions are monolithic organisations interested in maintaining their own power. And so they often bully governments and organizations and businesses into doing things just because they're bullying them, just to keep their power. That's another thing, nothing to do with the workers. Now, I have a vague memory of something to do with the railways where you could there was something about breaks, and you were given 10 minutes to get to wherever you had to take a break. And the place where you took the break was at a building that was across the road from the station. And it's not 10 minutes, it's like 2 minutes across the road. But then the problem was there was a back entrance, and the union made sure that the time it took to get to the recreation room or the cafe or whatever it was the route between the station and the back of the building, which involved walking around an entire block instead of just straight across through the front door. That's what they did. And I think their excuse was it was easier for a disabled person. Oh, yeah, and they had a disabled person make the walk as well. That was it. I have very vague memories of it, and I may not be strictly accurate, but you can see the general drift of what I'm saying. And this is the problem. Where do we draw the line between reasonable working conditions for people and keeping businesses afloat? And at the moment, it's not the governments. Really, it's the unions, but very often for the best of reasons. So there's a tension here, isn't there? Anyway, it's worth thinking about, and I thought I'd just throw the subject out for you to think about it as well. Till next time. Why not treat yourself or a favoured relative or friend to these magnificent examples of merch? The mugs and t-shirts come in the Graniopteryx design or Granbo with a firearm or the more deadly knitting needles. Go to www.graniopteryx.com and whatever platform you're watching this on, please click like, subscribe and share.